What up, bitches? Jamie-Leigh here, offbeatphotographer.com. Welcome to my very first Offbeat podcast, or Offcast. Today's episode brings you someone very special to me, Dr. Katie Staab. Katie is one of my dearest friends and McDaniel College's most enthusiastic professors. We talked about our portrait session together, which took place on August 7th, 2018 in the biology lab at McDaniel, a liberal arts college in Westminster, Maryland. Katie had just received the Zepp Distinguished Teacher Award and needed an 8x10 black and white portrait of herself to be hung in the school's Wall of Fame. She is the youngest professor to receive the award, which to those of us who know her, surprised exactly no one. Katie has been a constant source of happiness in my life and has always been a curiously kind person in general. Biology has always been her passion, and she's been injecting that enthusiasm for the subject into her students at McDaniel for 6 years. She is my happy thought, and she's changing lives. Dr. Katie Staab, the Zepp Distinguished Teacher for 2018. Today I am interviewing one of my very best friends. I was fortunate enough to photograph Dr. Katie Staab back in, I think it was
August.
Yeah. Okay, it was back in August. She received, very rightfully so, the Zepp Distinguished Teaching Award from McDaniel College, where she has been a biology professor for how many years?
This is my sixth year at McDaniel.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then is it strictly biology, or is there sort of more to that? Is it just biology professor?
Right, so I'm an assistant professor because I don't have tenure yet. Hopefully, I did apply. It's in review right now, so I might be an associate professor next. That's like the titles that they have.
Okay.
But I am in the biology department, so yeah, I'm a professor of biology. But I also teach anatomy and physiology. That's sort of like my specialty.
Your specialties,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And Katie got her doctorate degree from GW, correct?
Yep, George Washington University in D.C.
And then her undergraduate degree, along with myself, from Mount St. Mary's College. Do you have a hard time saying university now?
I think I've trained myself to say it now, and I'm in the business of higher ed, so I kind of get some of the reasons why they chose it, but I remember being really upset when they changed the name.
I still have sweatshirts with college written on it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and actually McDaniel went through a name change too back in the early 2000s. They used to be Western Maryland College, and I think a lot of their alumni are upset, and the bookstore still sells things that say Western Maryland College.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was going to say that with McDaniel, they're currently colleges. Do you know of any plans of becoming a university, or?
I don't think so. There are categories in that U.S. News and World Report, and McDaniel really wants to stay a college with that small atmosphere. If you get too many master's programs, then you're getting a little bigger and you get in a different category, and they want to be in that category of small liberal arts colleges.
Okay, that makes sense. So going back to the Zepp Award, you asked me to come over to McDaniel, which is Westminster. We're in Westminster, Maryland, and take some photographs, headshots of you for the Hall of Fame wall. Is that what they call it?
That's what they call it on campus, yeah. But that's every year when a professor wins the teaching award, they get a black and white portrait put on this wall. And so this is going back to, I don't know how many years, but there are probably over 100 portraits on the wall.
There's 2 walls, a lot of heads on both walls.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So it was quite an honor, and also a little intimidating to get my picture taken because that's not really my thing,
Right, yeah. No.
I'm usually taking pictures of specimens. Instead,
yes, you get to attach your camera to your microscope. Right?
Exactly, you helped me with that. I got that Nikon that I like.
That's right. Yeah, definitely. Well, funny enough, it was actually it's always slightly awkward to turn into professional Jamie around friends and family.
Oh, sure.
So I had an equal level of, do I tell Katie to, give me the duck lips? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
and you do, obviously, you do feel, more comfortable making a silly joke to get you to smile or something as you would to somebody you probably have never met, and you're like, are they going to be offended by this? But, but to turn into Katie and I can definitely get into a conversation that will last a little while. Right?
Sure, fair enough.
And so, but when you're trying to work, of course, you can't always... Right.
Yeah.
And I think that was tough that day to be, I want to hang out with my buddy.
And catch up with things. But we planned strategically. We planned to have lunch afterwards so that we could, get the shoot done and then catch up on each other's lives. And,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting dynamic, like I was saying. Like, I'm sure you felt awkward. I would feel awkward in front of a camera despite what I do.
You have so much cool gear. So, I just started to really... Well, not that I didn't trust you already, but, I really... Because you were, explaining also the poses to, because, I want to look my best. It's on a wall. But,
right.
Yeah, and you did a great job. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You did a great job, too. And that's what I was going to say. I mean, the photos, I think there were a lot of options as I usually try to get. And I think we did too many. We could have probably dwindled it down a little less than we did. But as I often do, especially when I really kind of love the subject, is I have too many to choose from. So I couldn't, but I also do that. I keep it in to allow you to, because ultimately the ones that are my favorite, right? We had that discussion. McDaniel, the folks at McDaniel and I we all had wanted one picture that we had taken.
Which one? On the desk?
I think it was the desk with the microscope.
Okay, so Joe ended up using the microscope one in the Mount magazine.
Exactly.
But then I thought the marketing people liked the one with my really messy desk in the background with all the piles of papers that are still there. Don't worry.
Of course. Well, no, I do remember that there was this sort of where I was like, I agree, but she really likes this one. And so that's kind of what I try to do is I take too many, but I also try to take many different varieties because ultimately what I like isn't always what you may like or somebody else may like. So,
and those pictures work well for other things, but I just wanted that particular one for the wall.
Yeah, because it's going to be there for posterity. You want to come back in 50 years and be like, yeah, look at me, I'm hot stuff.
It's neat.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your background. We talked about where you went to school. You grew up in York, Pennsylvania.
Not too far away from here.
Right, exactly. So tell me, give me kind of a brief-ish history that what led you to become, Catholic schoolgirl from York County, Pennsylvania, to a biology professor at a liberal arts college in Westminster.
Yeah. Well, my parents always took me and my sister to museums, and we would go camping a lot. We were in nature. We always had a garden. And most of those things were free, right?
Yeah.
Or, cheap, a good way to go on vacation. But we were always learning, and, lots of times it was outside, and I always loved animals. So that's sort of where I got my start. And I loved school,
Hashtag nerd.
Hashtag nerd, right? Hashtag humble brag. But no, I would bring the dog encyclopedia, the D encyclopedia, so that I could memorize all the dog breeds, to bed with me, right? And so there was no question that I was going to college in my mind. Although when my parents saw the sticker prices, they were like, "Are you sure you're going to college?"
Right.
Because they never went to college and they made it. They're fine. Yeah. But that was just I knew I wanted, and at the time I sort of wanted to be a doctor because I thought that that's what scientists were.
Sure.
And I actually found my freshman year journal from Mount St. Mary's where they said, or the prompt was, what's the major difference between high school and college? And I wrote all of the teachers or doctors here. Wow. And so that, college was so brand new to me. I didn't know what a syllabus was or anything like that. Yeah. And thank goodness you were across the hall from me, keeping it real.
Yeah, we definitely came from the opposite sides of the world in a lot of ways, but yet like-minded people find each other. Yeah.
For sure, yeah. And a little bit of fate being across the hall, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, so then I was a biology major at the Mount, and I was a federal work study student, so I got the federal aid from, being able to work and get paid $10 an hour on-campus job.
Cool.
And initially I worked in the theology department, but then I finagled a way to get transferred to the bio. I'm like, I'm a bio major. Can I spend double duty time, get paid?
Yeah.
And so I worked in a lab, and I guess I did a good enough job that my professor took me to a scientific conference at my senior year. Okay. This is when we were roommates in that apartment, that really fun spot.
Yeah.
And
K-Towers represent.
Yep, K18. And so that was my first airplane ride.
Really?
Undergrad research was it totally transformed my outlook on the world. It opened up new career opportunities and
So it wasn't until your senior year that you realized you didn't want to be a doctor anymore and wanted to do the scientist?
No, actually, I was sort of figuring it out along the way. It's interesting for me to watch this process with students. So students will then work in a hospital. Well, what happened to me is I worked in a hospital. Really? And that's when I realized I didn't want to be a doctor.
Didn't want to be a doctor.
Because I saw the interaction between the doctors and the patients.
And you're not really interacting much, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And there were a lot of other things with the healthcare system that I knew they would frustrate me a lot.
Sure.
So, and I didn't know, even after I went to the scientific conference, I didn't go straight to grad school. I just got a job as a bio major in the biotech industry.
Right, doing what in the biotech industry?
So I was growing cells in petri dishes and in plastic containers, but they came from humans. So we would isolate them from a kidney that was donated, but not. Maybe it was too bruised to be transplanted, so we would be able to isolate the cells from the healthy parts and grow them to make new products.
Interesting.
And I didn't even know that could be a job.
Right?
It was actually a hookup I got from a guy that I worked with at Red Lobster during college. His mom worked there.
And if I remember correctly, that you could have made a pretty comfortable career doing that.
I could have made a heck of a lot more money, actually. Yeah. So some of my friends from that time are making a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
Sure.
A lot of money.
But I thought you had a different path, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I worked there for 2 years. I was frustrated with how driven by money everything was. Okay. So we, I don't know, we would just... The folks that weren't making a lot of money were getting taken advantage of. The folks that were making a lot of money would take on new deals to make more money.
Right.
And the main thing that frustrated me is that the processes that we were doing in the lab were already approved for these clinical trials. So the FDA, you can't change them. So sometimes the cells would die, but I knew how to fix it, but I wasn't allowed to change the protocol.
Oh, jeez.
So that was really frustrating to me.
The bureaucracy end of things, the having to go through 16 different layers to... Interesting.
But at that job, I got my hands on so many cool things, and I learned so much about, the biotech industry, which is still helpful for me. But I also got to train new employees, and that's when I was like, oh... I think being a college professor might be the right way to go.
Sure.
Because I can still work in a lab and do research and ask questions about nature and also use my people skills and train others.
Yeah. So, the whole saying of those who can't do teach? Right? Okay. How do you feel about that? Because I don't know if I've ever agreed with that. I mean, how can you teach if you don't know how to do?
That's a good question. Yeah. So I have... thought about that actually, because I've thought, in times when I may have been frustrated about money because I don't make as much money as I could, I'm like, why don't I just go to med school now? Because I probably could, or and I actually do have, I could call up somebody in the biotech industry. I have several folks that have said, hey, if things don't work out in higher ed, let me know. I haven't been tempted by that. I have been slightly tempted to go, but I actually think I'm making more of an influence by making doctors.
Yeah, that's it's interesting you say that. Just to bring in a personal anecdote. So Steve, even though he's not technically a teacher, one of the biggest reasons why he never took a big promotion or a managerial position is because he felt like if he were to do that, he wouldn't be able to teach those coming in to do the right processes and do the right, because typically now it seems, of course I don't have experience growing up in 60s or 70s or anything like that, but it seems that now there's you come into a job and it's like, have fun figuring that shit out.
Read the manual
and figure it out on your own.
Watch these videos.
Right, whereas back in the day, there actually used to be somebody who would train. I mean, when I worked at McDonald's, I was considered a trainer. I would train all the new employees.
Apprentices, almost, yeah.
Right. And so he had a big problem with that whole concept, and that's kind of, he's created a niche where he is now, where he can do a little bit more of that. So, and he's probably the person who does his job the best out of a good vast number of people. So the whole, and his mom of course is a teacher, and it's like, if you can't teach, and then it's like, but these people are some of the most accomplished.
You almost have to be able to do more in order to teach, because you have to be able to do the thing, right, which is, knowing medicine or knowing anatomy or dissection or whatever, but you also need to be able to translate it in words. So yes, you're the expert, but so many professors are experts that can't break down a complicated problem to help
for us lay people,
the new folks understand. It sounds like a different language most of the time, right? So that's my approach, and it's important to me because I know that I used to not be able to communicate as well. I got training on that, right? I got that at the Mount. I got even more in grad school, and so that's a gift, education. It's a gift and a curse. Now I owe it to be the translator for these complicated scientific notions, so that, anybody can understand it. Right.
It's very, very interesting because, like you were saying before, not all experts can teach. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I have always found. I've never taken one of your classes, but just knowing you, and I think I've said this to you before, it would be so cool. I think you would inspire me to care about biology, whereas I certainly didn't. But the enthusiasm that you bring to it alone, even if you didn't know what the hell you were talking about, and luckily you do, but even if you didn't, the enthusiasm and the smile on your face like you have on right now, that's contagious, and people are like, I want to be around that kind of person. Like, I just want to, you know what I mean? Like, people want to gravitate, because there's enough
negativity
sullen,
in the world.
There's enough sullen, angry, whatever.
Students actually mention that on my course evaluations. One of the questions has something to do with enthusiasm, and you can rank, and I most of the time I get 100% enthusiastic. And sometimes on a Monday morning when it's raining, I'm faking it.
Of course.
Of course. But no, I love to learn. I love to geek out about the fact that our cells are making oxygen right now. Every single cell in your body is doing it. I mean,
so you get excited like I would get excited for a new Beatles record. And Katie's like, oh my god, new cells!
It's happening in your body right now. You can't even feel it, but it's happening. Thank God.
Happening. That's so funny. So if I remember correctly, though, if you had a great education in the biology side of things via MSM and GW, but what is sort of lacking, right, is teaching how to teach. Am I right?
So actually, well, if you get a PhD to be a college, and you end up being a college professor, now a lot of schools, that means, like if you're at University of Maryland or one of the bigger schools, that means you're a research scientist, and your graduate students are doing more teaching than you are usually. But at schools like the Mount or McDaniel, the PhDs are teaching. But that's not what we're trained to do. We're trained to be scientists. Gotcha. And so, but I knew that I wanted a job like this. So throughout, I was fighting for opportunities to teach. So yes, I, TA'd to pay the bills, but, I'd fill in, hey, that professor's going to a conference. Can I lecture during those 2 days or whatever? And so I would jump at any chance to learn about teaching, and I put all of that on my resume when I was applying for these jobs. So
what is it about your teaching that led to the Distinguished Teaching Award. Do you know? What do you think if you don't know?
Well, so the award is named after a guy named Ira Zepp. He was a professor in the 60s, I know, at least, because I know he was a professor there during the Civil Rights Movement and when the first black students were graduating from, at the time, Western Maryland. And he was already an inspiration to me.
So you knew about him beforehand?
Yeah, I was already, like, taking notes on him because
hashtag nerd.
Yeah. Because I thought he was such an inspiration.
Cool. And what did he teach?
He was in the religious studies department.
Is that right? Okay.
But I know that, like, the day that ML King died, there were white students cheering, and one of the black students stayed at Ira's house with his family. Even though Ira was getting threats from his neighbors and so forth. Right. But anyway, I think I even said it during my interview about the human element. Like, I'm not just teaching to profess anatomy. I'm teaching because there's another human in front of me that wants to learn anatomy.
Right.
So I like humans. I want to make every human feel better and be better.
Right.
And so I think I'm in a good position. I consider with humility how much power I have in what I say and what I do and how I live.
Has it always been higher ed for you? Did you ever consider a secondary?
So I always wanted to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And my mom, I wrote this recently in my reflection in my tenure documents, and I said, maybe mom always does know best, because my mom always thought I should be a teacher. But I think I kind of rejected that because, like, girls should be nurses or teachers.
Right.
Well, I wanted to be a doctor.
Right.
But I think my calling has really always been teaching.
Yeah.
But I wanted to do it at the highest level I could.
Right, and you want to do it sort of on your own terms a little bit?
I am really grateful.
Would you consider yourself a biologist first and a teacher second, or a teacher first and a biologist second? Or
depends on the time during my life, and that may continue to, like, ebb and flow. I think right now I do consider myself primarily a teacher. But 5 years ago I would have considered myself primarily they're kind of both interwoven,
right. Right.
I hopefully will get a sabbatical soon, and then I will be like full-on biologist again.
Any ideas what you might be?
Oh yeah, so mostly writing up the papers with all the data that my students have collected over the past few years.
Sure.
So huddled over a laptop, but I am also going to be learning how to use a materials testing machine, which measures stresses and strains, and I'm going to put different fish cartilaginous tissues in there to see how they respond to different stresses and strains.
Well, that's
stresses.
That's okay. So, so to see the breaking point, essentially.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yep.
And I think we didn't mention that before, but fish is sort of a specialty of yours, right?
Right. So when you go to graduate school, you have to really specialize.
Yeah.
And I remember I applied to a bunch of different programs, so like a caterpillar lab, because that's what I worked on in undergrad. But
they had one of those at the Mount, like a caterpillar lab?
What's that?
They had that at the Mount?
You didn't know that? That's why I was going to the science building in the middle of the night for those timed experiments for the caterpillars, yeah.
Oh, wow. I missed a lot, apparently. Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so that's why I had cool. keys to the science building.
Right. Well, I figured you're a trustworthy student. Of course I give you keys.
Little do they know. Right. Anyway, so...
Microphone?
Yeah, I know. Is this thing on?
Right.
No, so I remember actually my PhD advisor, my first year, she's like, "Are you sure you want to work on fish?" Because I knew so little about them, but I loved the concepts of evolution and embryology development, and she did both of those things. It happened to be with fish.
Gotcha.
And so I ended up learning so much about fish. Right. And I even, when I was looking for postdocs, I shadowed somebody at Hopkins, and she worked with mammals, and I was like, I don't think I can work with animals with fur. You know, just they seem a little more cuddly to me.
Fish, not so much.
Well, I do get attached to some of my fish,
okay.
But you know, they're ectotherms. They, you know, it's, you know, I have to kill them to look at their anatomy, right? And there's just an easy, nice medicine you can add to the water, and we should all be so lucky to go in such a humane way.
Sure, okay.
But yeah, no, the other reason that fish are so exciting is because there's so many of them. So over half of the animal species with backbones are fish. So they're so diverse, and there's so many questions that we can ask about their anatomy. And yes, I look at their cartilage specifically because we, as mammals, have 3 types of cartilage, and they have like 20 different types, and we don't know what they do, and they have more joints in their heads and different types of cartilage to build the joints, and it's just...
Wow.
Yep, it's wacky.
Yeah.
Lots of good questions that undergraduates can ask, right? So undergrads aren't going to be there in the lab working as long as a grad student or a postdoc, so you want to have these little bite-sized nuggets for them to look at, and then I can sort of put those pieces together in a bigger whole.
Right. Have you inspired other folks, some of your students into the fish arena?
So at least one, if not 2 students who recently presented at the Society for Integrative and Comparative Biology's annual conference. Okay. It used to be American Zoology, but we're all like animal people. It was clear that they just had the same experience that I had. Like, oh, is this what scientists, you know, and oh, people are actually interested in the research that I'm doing, and oh, hey, I do know something about this.
Right. Scientists can be very vague. You're right. As you're talking about this, it can be like, you know, my grandfather was a scientist too, but he was a chemist, which is completely different.
Sure.
So you have this scientist, which is this big general umbrella term, and then you're like, but what does that mean? You have the looking through the microscope thing, but that's or like you said, a doctor. But there's like, oh, what do I do? I want to be a scientist. Have you noticed that too, where kids will come in maybe your freshman bio class, and like there's no, you know, and on one hand they're like, they never even thought about being a biology major, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I like this. Like, have you seen any of that?
I have seen a lot of students blossom, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And like really come into their own. So I have a lot of students who they start the bio major as a first year student, and they get the same experience that I have. And that's another thing that I try to do is just keep it real. They, you know, fail a test or fail a couple tests, or they just, you know, are going through, they have to figure it out. And I tell the stories about how, that happened to me too. But instead of, you know, you're allowed to cry about it for a day.
Right.
But then you have to get curious about that. So I failed. Okay, why? What can I change to make it better?
Right.
And then you change up your study habits, or you change up, you know, you go to your office, you do all the things that your professor tells you to do in the syllabus. You read the syllabus to start. But then I try to help the students gain the confidence that they can learn. Right. And just because they failed doesn't mean that they can't learn again.
Right.
And so I try to, you know, rise by lifting others.
So and I don't know if we've completely finished the Ira Zepp thing, but when it comes to that, what are the qualifications? What is it that they're looking for when they award a teacher? I mean, obviously, distinguished teacher or teaching is somewhat understandable, but do you know?
So I actually don't know that much about the process or the like qualifications, because I didn't even think that I would. I knew that you had to be there for 5 years before you were eligible for the award, but it was at the end of my 5th year that I got it, and so I actually didn't think I was eligible yet.
Yeah.
But I know that like departments could, you know, so another professor could nominate a professor for the award, but I learned that instead I got the most votes. So they send out emails to students and to surveys, and I got the most votes across campus for for this award.
For that award. From the students.
From the students.
Even better.
So it means so much.
I was going to say, would it mean...
It means so much more. Yeah. I mean, I'm grateful for my colleagues, don't get me wrong. That's another reason why I love that place. But it means so much more because I'm working for them.
Right.
Students first.
Yeah.
You know, I live by that motto.
Right. No, that's really cool. I think we saw the article before we talked about headshots. I remember seeing somebody posted it. I don't remember who it was. Somebody online posted it. Maybe it was...
Probably the McDaniel marketing department, right? You mean about the award?
Right, but no, I feel like Erica...
Oh, no, probably my mom.
Did your
on
mom...
Facebook,
on
probably?
Facebook,
Yeah,
probably. Somebody, somebody posted, and I remember hearing about it. But...
and Meredith sent it to our group.
Oh, yes. Our friend Meredith, yes.
Who's Before the Mount Reunion.
Before Mount Reunion, yes. Well, of course, we celebrated our 15th reunion back in last year, 2018. You know, as a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed college student like you're teaching now, you know, have you done... You know, obviously, you're still in the very beginning of this whole thing, so I don't want to say, have you done what you wanted to do? Because you're like, I don't know yet. But are you thinking that would you be proud of yourself as a 22-year-old, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed college graduate with 37-year-old?
Dr. Lori and I talked about this at the Mount Reunion.
Did you? Okay.
We went to High Rock.
Yeah.
And, you know, near Penmar Park.
Right.
And... we said, wow, we wonder what college Katie and college Lori would say of Dr. Katie and Dr. Lori.
Yeah.
And
I love having two friends doctor. I'm like, doctor everything, man.
Plus, Lori comes in handy when you break a tooth.
Absolutely. I have an appointment with her on Thursday, actually.
Oh, my God. I love going to see Dr. Lori.
Yeah.
Who loves going to the dentist? I do.
Right.
But I didn't know that this existed, you know. So I'm just so grateful that I had the opportunity to go to college and to learn about this type of career because, now I feel like I found what I was meant to do.
Right.
You know.
So some people have their act together from the get-go, and they know, and they pretty much do. I mean, I think our friend Meredith would probably be an example of that, where she kind of knew what she wanted to do and kind of did that. And you had a sort of, as we discussed, a roundabout way of getting to where you are. Do you think that gives you an advantage, especially when you're teaching, you know, college-age students? Does that give you an advantage because... they have no idea probably, or at least a lot of them probably don't. I know I didn't. Well, actually, no, I was the opposite. I thought I knew exactly what I wanted and then ended up doing something completely different. Yep. So, I mean, does that give you perspective or you know, kind of insight to help some of these kids who may come to you and say, Dr. Staab, I don't know what's up?
I have like a Staab's job advice document that I hand out for sure. But, you know, now with the internet, you have so many more opportunities to find information. I mean, I guess you still have to cultivate it, make sure, or, you know, curate it.
To know what you ask.
Yeah,
that's true.
But, yes, I'm able to give examples of, like, figuring out what you're good at, what you like, what you don't, and it doesn't have to be right away. Like, you don't have to have it all figured out. Right. You just, to be honest, a lot of life is just showing up on time. Right? And being able to show up and do what you were asked to do, but then the advantage that I had is that I took every opportunity to learn. Whatever job I was at, I tried to learn as much as possible. Right. Maybe not at Red Lobster, but like, you know, at the vet or any time I worked anywhere.
Yeah. The music store.
I wanted to learn as much as possible. Right. And also like still make a good impression, show up and do hard work. Right. And I think that's the example that I leave for my students, you know. But the other thing is that you have to be open-minded enough, not about only the world, I would hope, but also about yourself and just like, okay, plan A might not have been the one that was the right one anyway. Right.
And that's okay. Yeah. We all have time. Even us old folks at middle age here.
I know, when you ask about, like, I'm a teacher biologist, I'm like, what am I going to be next? Because, like, I have a lot of leeway in the way that I can take a lot of different parts of my career and my life, too, you know?
Right.
Because I'm always learning.
You know, so kind of a left turn here real quick, but I wanted to finish up on one thing, thinking here about it. You know, obviously when we all met each other at Mount St. Mary's, none of us knew what 37-year-old us were going to be.
At all.
There's no question, right? I mean, I know I'm completely different than 17-year-old me, which is crazy to think about, by the way, that I was 17 when I went to the Mount.
Oh, wow.
You know, I hadn't even turned 18 yet.
We've definitely, known each other over half our lives, yeah. Exactly.
20 years, exactly. So, but what I find interesting is that, you know, you and your BFF from the Mount, Erica, both ended up as teachers. Now, she kind of knew she was going into that teaching path, and you were kind of, you know, you hadn't quite gotten there yet, but, you know, and so I just find that's interesting. You both ended up teachers. You and your husband, Joe, also a Mount St. Mary's graduate, are both working higher ed. You know what I mean? So there's that, you know, I know he probably didn't think, and, you know, obviously with you're not sure about that, you know, and then you have your other BFF in Lori. You got the Dr. Staab and the Dr. Richter thing going on, and it's very interesting to see how, you know, even though we didn't know exactly where we were going back then, you know, we still have, you know, there's ways that still connect us in so many ways now that we never would have expected back then, or how we're like-minded people, and you just kind of like-minded people, I guess, end up doing similar. I don't want to say similar things because that's not entirely true, but you know, there's obviously a connection for a reason, and some of these similarities, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'm just kind of. It's just interesting to think about, you know, the similarities. You know, just knowing you and Erica in college, and you know, obviously she was an education major, but you know what I mean. To be as success. Well, I guess I always knew you guys would be successful. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
Come on.
But it's just...
I don't think anybody knows anything in college.
That's definitely true.
You know, that's the other thing about being a college professor. I try to remember, like, this is when they get to practice being adults.
Right.
That's what we were doing.
Yeah.
Is we were practicing holding down jobs and paying our bills and, you know, those types of things. And that
practicing with a safety net.
With a safety net.
Right.
Yeah. And, you know, just trying to figure things out.
Right. And it's definitely an invaluable experience. I mean, you know, I know plenty of my close people don't have 4-year college degrees, didn't live at college, and I know that they didn't miss out per se. They had their own thing, but at the same time, some of the life lessons that were learned there were pretty valuable. I never
would have met so many different types of folks.
Right.
And if I would have stayed in my small town, you know, and it's not even that I went to like any big town, Emmitsburg, right? But I was just introduced to folks from lots of other places, and you know, that's everybody has their own experience and their own perspective, and that's what college did for me, was opened a world of new perspectives to me. Right.
You know, not that it opened new perspectives, and it also sort of
it helped me solidify who I was. In finding you, like my friend group at the Mount too, you know, because you know, in high school, it's almost worse, where you're trying to, like, be cool and maybe be somebody you're not, or, you know, those types of things, and really figuring things out.
Right.
But, like, by the time you're at college, you're, like, at least kind of owning who you are. And then when you find other folks that, you know, are just kind, you know, curious and kind, then, well, who knows what y'all can do. Right.
Well, and that's kind of where I wanted to kind of wrap it up, which is the curious and kind thing we talked about before, and we've talked about it since. You know, would you consider, obviously, you want your students to know biology, and you want your students to know, you know, freshman, you know, seminar. I know it's not called that here, but you know what I mean? You want them to have those educational higher
first year seminar, because girls are allowed to be there too, not just freshmen.
Fresh women. we're getting very
sorry,
PC
not sorry.
No, that makes sense. But I think that is kind of a lesson that a lot of us learn in experiences like going to college or military even, or things like that, where you have to be sort of curious about things, and that to me is kind of the most valuable lesson that I got, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. The schooling part is obviously very important too, and there are certain things that have helped me along the way, but I feel like if there's one thing I took from college, in addition to my people, it was the idea that it's okay to be different, it's okay to be curious, it's okay to not be a mean girl in high school. You know what I mean? It's okay to, not that we didn't get away from it completely at the Mount, but I feel like there was a lot less of that popular clique stuff that you kind of, and maybe we were just lucky, but no, I feel like, what are your thoughts on that? Because you obviously have the academic side of things, but is life lessons like that something that you hope your students kind of take away as well?
There are estimates that it's somewhere between like 65 or 85% of the jobs in 2030 or 2050 aren't even invented yet. Right? So like, and students now, we don't even need books. We got Google. Okay, right. Alexa, tell me this. Right. And so I actually care. I'm not telling them what to know. Of course, it's anatomy, and students go into
and you have to memorize
school.
Sure, body
of
parts.
Course, yeah. But I'm teaching them strategies to learn, and so I don't care what they learn. I care how they learn, and that they learn how to learn. Right.
Right.
And there's a quote that's also bringing back the kindness part. There's a quote that says, "Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care." And so I make sure that students know that I am there for them to help them learn.
Right.
And so hopefully they are also there to learn, but I care that they are learning.
Yeah.
So if they are not learning, then I take it personally.
All right.
And I want to fix it.
Yeah.
So, and at a smaller school, you can actually, I notice when students are missing.
Right.
And I call them if I need to.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
That's very interesting. And it learns, maybe some of those students maybe haven't experienced that kind of, which can change a perspective on things and stuff like that.
So McDaniel is in a book, 40 Colleges That Change Lives, and that's really, you're in this time where you're becoming an adult, you're a practice adult, and if you have never experienced somebody that cares so much, then we can transform a human, and hopefully send them off a better person. So
I will say this, and this is kind of a good stopping point because I think that's a good spot to end on, but I genuinely believe this. I was reciting an experience from the Mount to my therapist, and in it was you and Erica swooping in to help. And genuinely, Joe too, Lori, Justin, so many, but especially you and Erica. You did do that for me. There was some trust issues. There still is trust issues. There's things that I kind of bring with me, that I had with me full force. Didn't realize it at the time, but was starting to come to grips with some of the stuff that I had. And you guys, so many memories from freshman year through to senior year, where it's like Katie and Erica to save the day. And even though you weren't my professor or my, adult whatever, you were my peer, it totally changed my perspective on, there are people, like-minded people, for one, which was kind of an odd, not completely odd, but somewhat odd. I always thought I was a little left fieldish, and to find other people who were like left fieldish too, but not, we aren't too far from center. You know what I mean? We're certainly not, but the quirkiness, there's some quirkiness there that is like, and so, even though, I know that you're doing that for your students, because that's genuinely what you did for me. And, that's why 20 years later, we're still giggling like we were 17, 18 years old. And you know what I mean? Why your Aunt Katie to my daughter. And so I have no doubt, I knew that this award was something that you well deserved. And just hearing you talk about it now makes me excited for it. And I know that enthusiasm and that love and that care is transforming these kids in some, even if it's a small way, some small way. And I know that because, again, you did it for me. And so thank you for being fucking awesome.
Thanks, man.
High five Saturday. Slamming Saturday.
Slamming Saturday.
So anyway, I think you and I are both very hungry.
I am.
Yeah. But thank you very much for chatting. This was a good chat.
And thank you. This was making me excited to start the semester on Monday.
Exactly. There you go.
I appreciate that.
Your students are definitely very lucky, and the staff at McDaniel are definitely very lucky. And thanks for letting me take your pictures. I think they turn out amazing.
Thank you so much.
You're a beautiful human being.
Thanks,
and
James.
I love you. So,
right back at you.
Yep. So that's Jamie-Leigh Bissett, offbeatphotographer.com, with my favorite Dr. Katie Staab, biology professor at McDaniel College, and the Ira Zepp distinguished teacher, teaching whatever, I don't care, but you're distinguished.
Thanks.
Forever. So, all right, take care. See ya.